who was appointed by George W. Bush, simply didn't do its job. Now, where are we going to go today? We passed out of this House. I find it a great privilege and honor to have been here to vote on the financial reform bill that was moved from Congress over to the other House on Democratic votes. Very few, and I don't recall really any members of the Republican caucus voting for that financial reform. I know where we stood. We stood for regulating Wall Street, for reining in Wall Street. We want those profits to go to Main Street, not to the bigwigs on Wall Street. So where do we go from here? We await the action of the other House, which hopefully will come. I know the President will be speaking on this matter I think tomorrow, Thursday, in Wall Street. He's going to go up there and say, give us the reforms. We need these reforms to set in place the proper guidelines for Wall Street, for the financial industry. Will it happen? What's your guess?
If the American people speak up, it will happen, much like anything else in this country. But we've got to make sure that the American people are educated about what's really at stake here. I mean, it is our kids' future. It's whether or not there's going to be the kinds of funds in California that are going to allow our kids to go to college. Because now there has been such a shrinkage in the number of slots available because there's just no money. With a $60 billion shortfall in the state, with so many people unemployed, the revenue's not coming into states. I mean, it becomes a death spiral, and we cannot allow that to happen again.
People talk about the partisanship in Congress and in Washington, D.C., and I've really seen it. I saw it on the financial reform bill, Democrats voting to rein in Wall Street, Republicans voting no. We saw it on an issue just raised about kids being able to go to school. 3 weeks ago now, we voted on a major reform of the educational loans for American students.
And who was protecting who? Would you yield? Who was protecting who? If you go back to the student aid issue, what we had was an opportunity to take the $60 billion that was being given for all intents and purposes to middlemen, the banks, and say, you know, we don't need to spend that anymore. We're going to spend that kind of money on loans to students and not have those middlemen and just have the banks servicing these loans. And you would have thought that everyone would have been supportive of that. Not true. Not true. I know that we had no votes from the other side of the aisle on taking $60 billion back from the big banks and giving it to students. We also, just a week before that vote, we had another vote up on insurance industry, which you're so familiar with, and I know that I am. The health care reform was a major reform of the health insurance industry practices. No more discrimination against women. No more discrimination against people with pre-existing conditions. And the freedom from fear of losing your job, losing your health care insurance, and losing your life and your life savings. Those major insurance reforms were voted out of this House without one Republican vote. Excuse me, there was one. One Republican voted for those reforms of the insurance practices to end health care discrimination. It's really interesting, bipartisanship, not on the major issues where you're helping Main Street, not on the major issues of helping students, not on the major issues of reforming the health insurance practices. On those kinds of things, it's very, very clear where we stand on the Democratic side of the aisle. We stand for reform, reining in Wall Street, bringing into play serious restrictions on the ability of insurance companies, health insurance companies, to discriminate against women and children and those with pre-existing conditions. I know you've been there for many of these fights, and it's been a great pleasure to work with you on those. Perhaps it's time for us to wrap this up, and if you'd like to kind of close, and then we'll go on our way. Thank you for yielding. I think the important message that we're trying to drive home tonight is, if you really want to see reform, then follow the money. Follow the $1.4 million a day that's being spent by Wall Street trying to lobby to keep the status quo. Follow the bonuses and the salaries. Follow how the money was moved from one account to another. Follow the shorting that went on in this industry where they were selling the same products that they were shorting because it was all about making money. We want to make sure that the average American is protected, and that's why it's important to reform this system. I yield back.
Well, I thank you so very much for your good work on it. This is a very, very clear dichotomy about where we stand. Our friends in the Republican caucus opposed the job bills that were put forward last year, the stimulus bill. They opposed it. They opposed the unemployment insurance programs that would keep people with enough money to be able to continue to keep their home and provide food for their people. They opposed efforts to curtail the excessive Wall Street bonuses, opposed creating a new consumer protection agency to rein in Wall Street, opposed the tax cuts for small businesses and working families, and opposed regulating Wall Street to prevent foreclosures. On the other side of the aisle, I proudly say that the Democrats in this House supported the jobs bill last year that created thousands of jobs, or hundreds of thousands of jobs. We support the unemployment insurance extensions. We support the efforts to curtail excessive Wall Street bonuses. And we support creating a new consumer protection agency to watch over the excesses of Wall Street. And we supported the tax cuts for small businesses and for working families. And finally, we support regulating Wall Street and preventing further foreclosures and meltdown of the economy. It's been a challenge. And it's been a very, very important time in America. We've seen the worst of it. We've seen things getting better. We've also seen greed to the excess. And that greed, unfortunately, is going to continue unless we get a strong financial regulation bill to the President. And I know that my Democratic colleagues and I want to see that happen, and we'll do everything we possibly can. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the remaining portion of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time.